What if the most revealing thing about a woman isn't what she says, but what she doesn't even realize she's showing? Most men search for answers with questions, but the wisest men, they watch in silence and see everything. You don't need to interrogate her past to know her truth. You just need to know where it's hiding, and it's almost never in her words. Most guys make one fatal mistake when trying to get close to a woman. They ask about her exes, her childhood, her heartbreaks, her last relationship. And on the surface, it seems honest, even admirable, like they're just trying to connect. But the moment you ask, something changes. She starts curating, editing, filtering, not necessarily to manipulate you, but because self-protection is instinct. And that means what you get isn't her raw past, it's the version she's comfortable presenting. But what if there was a way to know her past, not from the stories she chooses to share, but from the signs she doesn't even know she's leaving behind? Here's the truth. People don't just talk about their past, they live it. It shows up in the way they flinch, freeze, or lean in. It leaks out in habits, reactions, silences, offhand comments, and even how they look at you when you say certain words. Her past is written all over her if you have the eyes to see it. You don't need to be Sherlock Holmes. You don't need to play psychologist. You just need to observe. And once you do, you'll begin to know more than even her best friend might. You'll see whether she's still haunted, whether she's healed, whether she can build something newer, if she's still trapped in the wreckage of what came before. In this video, I'll walk you through the signs, the invisible trail of emotional history, and how to protect yourself from being drawn into a story you didn't even know you were entering. 1. Her relationship with attention. Social cues. One of the easiest ways to glimpse her emotional past is by watching how she handles attention, especially from men. Not just when you compliment her, but how she carries herself in a room, how she engages online, how she responds when the spotlight finds her. Does she downplay the moment? Stay grounded? Or does she light up like she's starving for it, like it's the first time she's ever felt seen? Pay attention to how often she brings up male attention without being asked. Is it constant mentions of guys in her DMs? Compliments at the gym? Men just won't leave me alone? Sometimes, it's not about the stories, it's about the need behind them. A woman who was neglected, ignored, or made to feel invisible, whether in childhood or past relationships, often learns to define her worth by how many eyes are on her, and often, she doesn't even know she's doing it. It's not vanity, it's validation. And there's a major difference between a woman who enjoys attention and one who needs it to feel whole. One brings lightness, charm, maybe even fun. The other brings a slow-burning danger, because the moment your attention fades, even slightly, she might unconsciously seek it elsewhere. Not out of malice, but because it feels like survival. Don't just look at how she dresses or how often she posts. Look deeper. Ask yourself, does she crave admiration or genuine connection? That single question can tell you more about her emotional history than any monologue she gives you about her past. 2. How she talks about other women. You can learn volumes about a woman not just by how she talks to you, but how she talks about other women. Notice the tone. Is it warm, supportive, or is it laced with sarcasm, low-key judgment, and subtle digs? If every woman she mentions is fake, a mess, trying too hard, or probably cheating on her man, that's not just commentary. That's a mirror reflecting old insecurities, past betrayals, scars that still shape the way she moves through the world. You're not just hearing her gossip, you're hearing what's unresolved. A woman who constantly calls others too flirty may have been cheated on. One who questions every successful woman might secretly feel like she's behind in her own life. And when she says things like, "I just don't get along with women," that's not strength. That's trauma in disguise. That's trust broken so many times it became a philosophy. If she's at peace with herself, she's usually at peace with others. But if every woman is a threat, ask yourself, What happened that made her feel like life is a constant competition? 3. Conflict style. What she does when things go wrong. If you truly want to understand a woman's emotional past, don't just watch how she acts when things are smooth, watch how she behaves when something goes wrong. Because conflict has a strange way of dragging the past into the present. And I'm not talking about screaming matches or massive drama. I'm talking about the small moments, the missed text, the unexpected change of plans, the tiny misunderstanding that shouldn't matter, but suddenly does. Does she shut down and disappear into silence? Does she lash out, throwing words like daggers, trying to hurt before she's hurt? Or does she breathe, stay with the discomfort, and try to understand? These aren't random reactions. They're survival strategies shaped by her history. A woman who was emotionally neglected or constantly abandoned may freeze during conflict. Not because she's cold, but because, in her past, expressing emotion meant rejection. Another might go on the attack not because she wants to fight, but because vulnerability once led to pain. She learned that offense is the best defense. You'll see it in how quickly she escalates, or in how fast she withdraws. She's not reacting to you entirely. She's reacting to a history of moments you weren't there to witness. If she instantly assumes the worst, if she spirals when you go quiet, if she prepares for abandonment every time you set a boundary, she's not just mistrusting you. She's still carrying the script someone else wrote. And here's where your awareness becomes critical. You don't need to fix her. That's not your role. But you do need to ask yourself, are you prepared to love someone through their healing, or will you end up becoming collateral damage in a war you didn't start? Because conflict isn't just about compatibility. It's a reenactment of how she learned to survive emotional pain. 4. Her relationship timeline, without asking directly. Here's something most men don't realize. You don't need to ask, so when was your last relationship? Because the truth is, you can hear her entire emotional timeline if you're listening for the right things. You see, when people are relaxed, when they feel they're not being judged, they start dropping clues. A simple phrase like, "We used to love that place," sounds casual. But that "we," that's a breadcrumb. She's not talking about a friend. She's remembering a past chapter, maybe one she hasn't fully closed. Pay attention to how often she references past experiences. Does she talk about that time a few months ago? Or back then, after everything fell apart? Does she name the time frames or completely avoid them? A woman who's healed usually speaks clearly about the past. Not to dwell, but because she's made peace with it. But if she glosses over big transitions, if she skips emotional turning points, if she avoids anchoring moments to any real time period, that silence is loud. You'll also notice the way she talks about rebuilding. I had to start over. I had to put myself back together. Those are powerful signals, not just of heartbreak, but of transformation, and possibly trauma. The key here is this: don't rely on surface-level questions. They often trigger rehearsed answers. Instead, lean into real conversation. Let her reveal herself through her language, her phrasing, her hesitations. She'll show you her timeline without even knowing it if you give her space. And sometimes, the deepest truths are found not in what she shares, but in what she avoids. The moments she skips over, the names she doesn't say, the years she refuses to revisit. Are you the kind of man who hears that silence? Because often, what's not said tells you everything. 5. Her views on men in general. If you want a brutally honest glimpse into a woman's emotional history, don't just pay attention to how she talks about you. Listen to how she talks about men as a whole. What does she say when the topic of men comes up, whether it's her exes, her male friends, or even a guy in a movie? Is her tone light, neutral, teasing? Or is it sharp, guarded, maybe even bitter? When a woman casually jokes, "Ah, men are the worst," it might sound harmless at first, But if that same joke keeps surfacing and always carries a little sting behind the smile, that's no longer a joke. That's memory in disguise. She didn't wake up one day with that opinion. She lived something that made her feel that way. You're not just hearing an opinion. You're witnessing her trust history unfold in real time. If she constantly assumes that men lie, cheat, or disappear emotionally, it's probably not because she read it in a self-help book. It's because she experienced it up close. And here's the hard truth. Even if she seems sweet, flirtatious, and affectionate with you now, those deeply rooted beliefs don't just vanish because you're treating her well. They will shape the way she relates to you, especially when tension enters the picture. Maybe she gets suspicious when you go quiet. Maybe she braces for abandonment before anything has even happened. Maybe she punishes you for the wounds someone else left behind. That's not a personality flaw. That's what happens when trauma becomes a template. But understanding this doesn't mean you should excuse toxic behavior. It means you see clearly without judgment, but with wisdom. Because when you understand the why behind the reaction, you stop making it about you, and you begin to ask a deeper question. Am I stepping into a new relationship or into someone else's unresolved story? Because sooner or later, if she hasn't processed what past men did to her, she'll hand you that emotional weight and expect you to carry it. The question is, are you willing to? 6. How she talks about her family. If you want to understand how a woman builds trust, forms bonds, and experiences love, look at how she speaks about her family, especially her parents. You don't need to pry into deep trauma or dig for dramatic stories. The truth is often right there, wrapped in casual conversation. When she mentions her father, is her tone soft, cold, bitter, detached? Even a single sentence can be packed with meaning. For example, if she says, "Yeah, my dad was around. We weren't super close, but whatever." Pay attention to that whatever. It's not just a filler. It's a mask. And it's carrying the weight of disappointment that was never fully unpacked. The father-daughter dynamic, especially, often becomes the emotional blueprint for how she views men, affection, and safety. If her love had to be earned, she might now crave constant validation. If love was inconsistent affection one day, withdrawal the next, she may expect emotional unpredictability as normal. And you'll feel it in how she reacts when you pull away, in how she interprets silence, in whether she rushes to prove her worth or constantly fears being too much. On the other hand, if she grew up in a stable, nurturing household, you'll sense it too. She'll likely handle conflict with grace. She'll communicate directly. She won't panic when plans shift because her emotional foundation is secure. Her family is like the quiet operating system behind every emotional decision. It doesn't shout, but it runs the whole show. So how do you read it? It's in the way she lights up or shuts down when you ask about the holidays. It's in how she talks about her mother, with admiration, annoyance, distance. It's in whether the phrase family time makes her smile or roll her eyes. You're not invading her privacy by paying attention. You're tuning into the emotional language she grew up speaking. And most people don't change that language. They just learn to hide it better. So if you want to know how she'll love you, start by noticing how she learned to love long before you ever entered the picture. 7. What makes her emotional and what doesn't? If you truly want to understand someone, pay close attention to what moves them. And just as importantly, what doesn't. You're not looking for tears or theatrics. You're looking for that subtle shift, that flicker in her eyes, that sudden silence during a scene in a film. That moment she changes the song halfway through, not because she dislikes it, but because it touches something she can't name. These emotional reactions, especially the ones she didn't mean to show, are like footprints. They trace back to a version of her shaped by experiences you haven't seen yet. Maybe a movie about betrayal makes her visibly uncomfortable. Maybe someone raising their voice triggers her to shut down. Maybe she goes uncharacteristically quiet when a story hits too close to home. Those are signals, not random, not small. They are echoes. An emotional response is rarely just about the present. It's a doorway into the past. And the opposite is just as revealing. If she seems numb when you open up emotionally, if she brushes off someone else's pain like it's nothing, if she stays composed in moments that would shake most people, that's a signal too. Sometimes, emotional detachment is resilience. Other times, it's a wall built long ago, bricks, laid one painful moment at a time. There's a reason she doesn't flinch anymore. It might not be strength. It might be emotional armor that became part of her identity. But here's the thing. You won't learn any of this by asking, "What makes you emotional?" Because she might not even know. Instead, you discover it by simply being present, by watching what stirs her and what leaves her cold. Because in those reactions, you'll begin to see the invisible emotional map she's been carrying all along. The scenes she skips, the songs she avoids, the conversations that tighten her jaw or soften her eyes. That's where her past lives. Quiet, hidden, honest. And the more clearly you see what shakes her or what doesn't, the more you'll understand if she's healed or still pretending she's fine. 8. Observation over interrogation. Here's what most men get wrong. They think the way to understand a woman is to ask more questions. But the smartest men? They watch more. They listen in the spaces between her words. They don't interrogate, they observe. Because real truth isn't revealed in rehearsed answers. It slips out in unguarded moments. Anyone can ask, "What happened in your last relationship?" And they'll get the highlight reel, the edited version she's already told herself 100 times. But the man who's truly paying attention, he already knows the answer. He saw the way she flinched when plans got canceled, the way she withdrew when things got too intimate, the way her entire face lit up when someone praised her mind, not her looks. These aren't accidents, they're emotional fingerprints. Being observant doesn't mean being cold. It doesn't mean playing games or manipulating her. It means being present. It means having the emotional intelligence to see her, not just hear her. It means knowing that behavior never lies. Words can mask, but patterns always reveal. Because when you rely only on what she says, you're often accepting the version of herself she crafted to survive. But when you rely on observation, you're seeing beneath the surface. You're seeing the woman behind the mask, the one still hurting, the one healing, or the one still hiding. And that kind of clarity, that's power. Not to control her, but to protect yourself. To walk into relationships with your eyes wide open. So don't chase answers. Let them unfold. Let her reveal herself. Not through confession, but through contradiction. Through behavior. Through patterns. Through silences she didn't mean to leave behind. Because the truth always leaks out. The only question is, are you sharp enough to see it? 9. Conclusion. The power of seeing clearly. If you've made it this far, you're already ahead of most men. Because now, you're not just listening to what a woman says, you're watching who she is. You're noticing what used to slip by unnoticed. Her reactions, her silences, her contradictions, her patterns. That quiet moment when she tenses up. That casual story she brushes off too quickly. That smile that doesn't quite reach her eyes. You now understand that these aren't random details. They're pieces of her past, showing up in the present. And when you learn to observe with this kind of clarity, everything changes. You stop falling for appearances. You stop getting swept away by chemistry alone. You stop wasting time on illusions and start connecting with women in a way that's grounded, discerning, and real. You begin to choose with intention, not based on how someone makes you feel in the moment, but based on what their patterns tell you over time. This isn't about judging her. It's about understanding her fully. And then deciding, is this a story I want to step into, or one I need to walk away from? Because observation gives you something that words never will. The truth. Not the polished truth she tells to feel safe, but the real truth that leaks through when she's not trying to hide. And that kind of perception, that quiet power of knowing, That's what separates men who lead their relationships from those who get led by them. If something in this video made you stop, reflect, or see differently, drop a comment and tell me what hit hardest. Was it something she said? Or something she didn't? I read every one. And if you're the kind of man who's done with surface-level advice, if you want to understand the deeper patterns, the real psychology, the hidden emotional dynamics that most guys miss, then hit that subscribe button now. Thank you.